Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Module 3. This module is on deep work and maximizing your productivity. This has to be one of my favorite modules in the Align and Accelerate program. The reason being, it's based on Cal Newport's book, Deep Work, and it had a profound impact on my life, and it's fundamentally shifted the way that I approach work and do things in my day-to-day life. And this module actually had the best feedback from the beta group that went through the course the first time. They were the most stoked about this one. So I'm excited to get you guys into this one, and let's dive right into it. I'm going to share my screen here with you. Boom. So deep work, maximizing productivity. We're going to have 4 parts to this. We're going to have deep work. We're going to have minimizing impulsiveness, styles of deep work, and the last part is going to be bulking. So let's start off by a simple question. What is deep work? And so deep work, like I mentioned, it's a book by Cal Newport. I highly recommend it for people. There's a lot of value and depth in it. I'm going to deconstruct it for you, the best parts, the most valuable parts right here. So it will save you reading the book, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't go into it and read it for all the other case studies and information, because obviously I can't dissect all of it. But the most important thing, or one of the most important things I should say, is the productivity equation. So Cal Newport's big on increasing the intensity of your work. So he has this formula, which is time spent times the intensity of focus is your high quality work produced. And so this is key, because really it is about having intense focus and being able to produce high quality work. If you're not outputting high quality work, what's the point in working? Like, there's no value in that. And so what it really comes down to is, like, when you are working, not to be distracting yourself, not to be on Facebook, social media, and all that stuff, but it's really to be intensely focused on what you need to get done. And so we're going to dive into this a little bit more. And so deep work, it's exactly what I was just speaking about. Whoops. One too many. So deep work is, there's a quote by Cal Newport here: professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their limit. These efforts create new value, improve your skill, and are hard to replicate. And the way that I look at this is, it's distraction-free concentration plus pushing your mental capabilities to their limit. And when you do that, you're going to get new value, improvement of your skills, and it's hard to replicate. So for me, it's like when I'm recording podcasts or doing my writing, those are my times of deep work, when I am creating things that other people can't replicate. Yes, there are other podcasts out there, there are other writers out there, but what is uniquely about me and the way that I create, that is my deep work. That is my impact on the world. And so when we do our own deep work, nobody else can replicate it. There might be similar things out there, but it's us doing our deepest, utmost expression of the project we want to create, of the business we want to launch. It's focusing on that. And these are the skills that you're developing for yourself so that you can grow and develop and become financially successful. So here are examples of deep work. You can be a painter, you can be a scientist, you can be a carpenter, you can be a student. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It's about focusing on the aspect that you want to create, what you want to bring to the world, and that's the most important thing. And what shape or form that takes doesn't really matter. So what does shallow work look like in comparison to deep work? So Cal Newport's definition of shallow work is non-cognitively demanding, logistical style tasks often performed while distracted. These efforts tend not to create much new value in the world and are easy to replicate. So what does this look like? And I thought this photo was absolutely perfect description of shallow work. It's somebody that you can replace quite easily. They're answering phones, taking notes, messages, just doing all these multitasking abilities. Obviously, the secretary is a great fit to that role. But when you're creating your own deep work, you're not doing multiple things at once. You are instead focused on one thing and one thing only, and really creating that. If we're on email or Facebook or answering calls at the same time, we're just doing a bunch of different shallow tasks, and that's not really how we want to spend our time. There are moments when you're going to have to do shallow work, and it's really about having in your calendar time for deep work and shallow work, because you're going to have to market your business. You're going to have to go on social media. You're going to have to write back to emails. So it is important for us to create times to do this, but it can't impact the deep work. We got to keep this stuff separate, is really what it comes down to. So why is it important to know the difference between shallow work and deep work? And I got into there a little bit, but the best way for me to explain this for you is an author called Neil Stephenson. I didn't know who he was until I read Deep Work, but he's wrote many sci-fi novels. Here are a few of them that is bestsellers and most known. But he has a great quote, and it says, if I organize my life in such a way that I get lots of long consecutive uninterrupted time chunks, I can write novels. If I get interrupted a lot, what replaces it? Instead of a novel that will be around for a long time, there's a bunch of email messages that I've sent out to individual persons. And this is just an example. Like, he's still writing, but is he writing to people that he doesn't really need to contact, or is he producing high value of work that's true to him? And so that's what we want to keep in mind, is when we're doing deep work, is really focusing on creating what's important to us. Now, there's an idea that I want you to introduce you to that really impacts or highlights why deep work is so important, and it's called attention residue. And this is a paper by Sophie Leroy. She's a prof at NYU University, and the paper is called "Why Is It So Hard to Do My Work?" And the way I want you to think of attention residue is your ability to think on a task and how to execute and how to get it done. And so it's like your mind. So these little particles here, let me get my laser out, in the middle are like our thoughts and our attention, and where we can focus our energy. And so if we do task A and we don't finish it, what happens with the principle of attention residue from this paper is that part of our cognitive ability still is working on that task. If we start something and we don't finish it, we don't go all the way, and then we begin a second task, and this is going to be starting task B over here, then yeah, we're focusing on this task, and like we can have part of our attention there, but because we never finished the first one, we're still thinking about it. And this ties on the shallow work. When we're doing multiple things at once, people think, oh, they can multitask. It's not effective because there's a task switching cost to this when we're not completing the first task and moving on to the second one, because our mind is not fully able to let go of that last project. So that's why it's important to work on things from A to B and really close things out from start to finish, because if we do multiple things at once, our mind's going to be shattered and we're not going to have that intensity of focus that Cal Newport is talking about in deep work. And so I'm going to turn off my laser here. And so why is this important? And I just highlighted it. It's about the intensity of focus. It's really about making sure when we are working that it's dialed in and it's high value. So based on the impact of attention residue, our goal is to do undistracted work, complete tasks from start to finish. And this is really getting into deep work again, is we really want to focus on completing things from start to finish, like I talked about, and being able to work undistracted. Now, Todd Herman, he's the guy behind Peak Athlete. He is one of my favorite productivity transformational coaches. He's worked with like Oprah Winfrey, Andre Agassi, a lot of different people. He's known as one of the top sales guys in the world. He's like another Tony Robbins. He's going to blow up in the next 2 or 3 years, in my opinion. But what makes Todd really interesting is that he says most people, and this is a quote directly from him, is their focus is split between several tasks, and that's the problem. And so he has a program called the 90-day year, and he says most people work on projects like this. They start A, they do B, then they do C, then they do A, then they do D, and then they go back to E. And this is not an effective way to get things done. So what should we be doing? Well, we want to go A to A, and that gets task A done. Then we want to go B to B, and that gets task B done. And then we want to go C to C, and that gets task C done. And so what we're doing is we're executing on the task in front of us. And this is the 90-day year program run by Todd Herman. It highlights that. That's one of the key components of it, is to keep getting one task done at a time. And this minimizes our attention residue. Like I talked about earlier from that paper, is that we're not shattering our energy and diverting our focus to one part here and another part there. We're fully focused on the task at hand and what we need to get done. And that's a key thing when we're doing our work, is to be able to do deep work that is undistracted. So part one wrap up, the key is to do one project at a time from start to finish. This is due to attention residue and really focusing our energy onto the one thing. Partake in deep work, undistracted, highly focused, pushing our mental cognitive abilities, maximizing our value, and this will allow us to produce our highest quality of work, because it's really about having that intensity and for us to get done what we need to get done. And that's the important thing, whether it's getting into better shape, whether it's building your business, whatever goals you're working at, it's about having high quality results and an impact and work effort. Part two, minimizing impulsiveness. And so impulsiveness is an important thing because it's something that will pull us away from what we need to get done. So since we know deep work is so important, how do we create more slots for ourselves where we do this undistracted work that we need to get done? And so minimizing our impulsiveness is a key aspect to this. And this is an idea that comes from The Procrastination Equation by Piers Steele's, probably my second favorite book that I came across doing research for this course. And he says impulsiveness is basically what threatens our motivation. It's the busy mind, always wanting to be stimulated, always wanting to be happy, that this is what pulls us to our phones. And this is why phones are the best distraction mechanism out there, is because our mind wants to be stimulated at all times. And when we get bored, we don't want to be doing that task anymore. And so sometimes when we get into deep work, we go in these long spells where if we have a state of flow, it can be fun and enjoyable, but sometimes like we really have to push ourselves through it too. And so we tend to maybe zone out or want to distract ourselves. And that's an important thing that we don't do, because if we stick to our impulsiveness, we're going to keep breaking up our time, and that's not what we want to do. And so the goal is to reduce impulsiveness and increase productivity. Again, it's getting that intensity of focus up so we can produce the highest quality work. That's really what it comes back to again. How do we, when we're on and working, having the highest quality work possible? And so Piers Steele says if we turn off our cell phone notifications, he made email notifications because it was more of like a workbook. But for us, all cell phone notifications, when we're doing our deep work, he says this will add an extra 10% of productivity and efficiency to you. And so if you aggregate that over a year, that's a whole month extra. So just by turning off our phones, and when we're working, we're actually working and not being distracted by incoming notifications, you gain a whole extra month of productivity. So that's an amazing hack right there. Just that alone, you can spend so much more time. And it's so simple. That's like airplane mode on your phone. It's going into that place to be able to work like that. And that's why we need to be able to do that. So how do we train our mind to reduce impulsiveness? This is from Deep Work. I found this rather fascinating by Cal Newport. So the first thing is we really want to create time blocks to use the internet. So you want to make these as frequent as possible. And so this is for somebody, like if you go into the office and you have to work by computer all day, it's so easy to get lost on the internet, whether it's on social media, whether it's in your email, whatever it is. So he says to, and even for myself, right, when I'm at home working on a podcast or writing, same thing, I can get lost in the internet. So it's important that we make time breaks. And this is why I segregate 7 to 11 in the morning is my deep work time. I shift around sometimes, but I really try to zone into that and make that time when I get my deepest work done. So you create these time blocks, and what you do is if you need the internet, you say, okay, 2 hours from now, I'm going to get on the internet and I'll be able to have a 30-minute, 15-minute distraction, whatever you want, answer some emails. But the key thing is if you need the internet for your work is to grab everything you might need from online first, download it, save it, have it, and then go to your work. If you need to do research, whatever it is, it's important that we don't stumble or permit ourselves to get back onto the internet because it's a deep black hole. And if we don't follow through with that, then we're going to be really stuck with the things that we're doing. So the second thing is these time blocks must stay internet free. If we start breaking this boundary, it's not going to be as successful and productive for us as possible. Third, if you do need to get on the internet for some reason, you need to move your time block 5 minutes from the present moment. And the reason for this is because we can't blur this like, oh, I'm just going to jump on the internet right now because I need to grab this one thing. If we start doing that, we allow ourselves to get on the internet, and before you know it, we're distracted and we're not working on what we need to. So it's really important that if something comes up during your deep work and you really have to get online, you figure out something that's critical to really you moving forward, then you move it to 5 minutes, you give yourself your 15-minute internet use time, and then you go back to doing your 2-3 hours of uninterrupted work. Whatever way that looks for you, because every day is going to be different, but the whole idea is to have a period of time where you're completely distraction-free, not on the internet, and then time where you're using the internet, and then you go back to your work, and as much as you want to flow between that, that's a key thing. And Cal Newport even says that you should be training this at home, because if your mind only does this at work, your mind doesn't know the difference between work and home, right? So at home, you should be like, I'm going to put my phone down. You don't have to like set times, but like for the next 2 hours, I won't check it, or I'll check it after this TV show, whatever it is for you, because that way we just don't want to become reactive to everything. And when we become reactive, it actually decreases our willpower, which is not a good thing, as willpower is something I'm going to talk a bit more later on in one of the modules. So the goal is to train our mind to improve our ability to concentrate and overcome our need for distraction. And that's the reason why we're doing these things. And so Cal Newport says, don't take breaks from distraction, instead take breaks from focus. And that's so true. Like if we're working really, really hard, we want to take a break from that. But if we're just distracted on the internet and then we go take a 15-minute walk, it's like we're not even doing anything, right? So make sure that our goal is to aim for high intensity, really being productive when we do our work. And then when we're not doing it, we want to take a break from that. So again, we're seeing patterns of the importance of uninterrupted work, whether it's Deep Work by Cal Newport or the procrastination equation or the one thing that I talked about last week and creating time blocks to get your one thing done for the day. It's really important that we have these periods of time where we don't have any distractions, because that's going to increase our productivity. And we need to create that for ourselves because nobody else is going to do it. So it comes down to our own responsibility. Part 3, 4 styles of deep work. So this is, even though the first 2 styles are not as applicable to you, I want you to know what the styles of deep work are, because you need to know which one you are and how it's going to apply to your life. All our lives are different. If you have kids, if you work a 9 to 5, if you freelance, your lives are all going to be completely different. And so you need to be able to understand what's going to accommodate your lifestyle. And so the first 2 aren't as practical. I'll talk a bit about them. So the first one is monastic. And monastic is basically doing this radical isolation, going out on your own and just writing something. So Mark Twain did this with The Adventure of Tom Sawyer, basically found himself a cabin, a lot of writers use, and they'll just go into a cabin and they'll write their book, and that's it. And it's this radical isolation until they get the project done. So for us, it's not exactly the most conducive thing to go run away for 3-4 months and just work, because a lot of it has bills and jobs and we need to pay those and work our jobs. And so that's the thing about monastic. If you can run away and do things and work 3-4 months on your project, great, but it's not the most realistic for everybody. So the next one is bimodal, and bimodal, Carl Jung used this a lot. He's the guy that challenged Sigmund Freud and a lot of his ideas, psychologist. But basically, it's this idea of you go away for 3-4 days. He was a married man. I believe he lived in Copenhagen. But anyways, he would go away for 3-4 days, do his writing, do his deep work, come back. And he was a practicing physician as well, a psychologist. And so he would have to practice with people and pay his bills that way. And so there's kind of this bimodal work where he was always working with people, and then he'd go off for 3-4 days and do his writing. And depending on the time of year, he'd do more or less of that and some increased intensity. But that's the look of bimodal, where it's still this idea of getting away and having distraction-free time on our own, but you're breaking it down like 3-4 day chunks. So the next one is rhythmic. And rhythmic, Jerry Seinfeld was known for using a rhythmic style. And there's this great quote by Jerry Seinfeld. It says, "The way to be a better comic is to create better jokes. And the way to create better jokes is to write one every day." And so this is called the chain method. And this is something Jerry Seinfeld totally believed in. One other comedian asked him one time, it's like, hey, how do you get better at being a comedian? And this is a quote, this is the answer that Jerry Seinfeld gave the guy. And so he says, put a calendar up on your wall, and you want to put an X every single day for writing a joke or doing your deep work or executing one thing, whatever that is, the thing that you need to get done. And you do that and you try to build like a 20-day chain of that in a row. And the more you can do that, he said, Jerry Seinfeld, like if you get 20, 21 days in a row, you start building momentum. And that's when you really like see the impact of your work. And that's what you want to focus on. So it's this idea of doing it consistently every single day, and you start developing a rhythm of it. So this is practical depending on your personality style. So it really just boils down to you. And the last one is journalistic. And this is basically doing deep work on demand. Anytime you have some free time, you isolate yourself and hammer away at your project. And Parkinson's law is at play here. The reason why it's called journalistic is because journalists are on deadline. They have a 5 o'clock rush sometimes to finish a piece. And so they have to be creative. They have to create their work. Doesn't matter if they have writer's block or not. And so this is where firm deadlines are driving behavior. And that's why I talked about Parkinson's law in the first module and having a deadline for everything you do. It's part of the DIS, right? It's the last S on stakes. And so it's important that we understand that deadlines help drive behavior, and it's important that we have these. And so one guy who was journalistic was Walter Isaacson. He's the guy that wrote Steve Jobs' book. And he was known for this, where he would just be on vacation with people sitting, and he'd feel inspired to write. He'd go upstairs, write for 45 minutes and come back down. And he would write in these like really abrupt spurts back and forth is what he's known for. He still does that. And so just finding what pattern works for you. Some people want to have more disjointed days, or that's just kind of how your day is scheduled. So you have to be able to accommodate that. But it's finding your deep work style. And so to wrap up this section, so those are the 4 styles: monastic, bimodal, rhythmic, and journalistic. And it doesn't matter which one you are, as long as you know the one that suits you. And that's the most important thing. Part 4, bulking. The next quote is by me. And so if you must do a task, it is best to stack as many associated tasks together as possible. And so this is basically what bulking is just combining our tasks together. Tim Ferriss pioneered this in the 4-hour work week. And what he was known for in this book, which a lot of people swear by, and I talked a bit with Cal Newport and how to minimize distractions, is just having this slots twice in a day where you check your email. And so his thing was that you'd only check your email at 10 a.m. at 4 p.m. because, as I showed you, I believe it's module 1, where what happens when you break up your day and there's all these interrupted time chunks of internet use in there, is you don't get a lot done. So Tim Ferriss would be like, you come in at 9 a.m. or 8:30, you work hard for an hour and a half, you get your most important stuff done, you check emails at 10 a.m. because if you work in a job, you have to check emails. In the morning, you check them once, get back to everybody. Then you go back to work, have your lunch, work again, and 4 p.m. you get back to everyone again about end of day emails, because most people don't have time sensitive emails. It's not like something you have to get back to again and again. And so unless your job is like that, you can have more time blocks. You can have to have 4 time slots a day where you check your email. But the key is to keep creating these slots in your day where you can work uninterrupted. The next slide is the power hour slide. And so this is a concept by Gretchen Rubin from her book, Better Than Before. And so how do we get rid of all those miscellaneous tasks that are sitting around in our life? So like mailing a package, donating old clothes, dropping off books, getting a new driver's license, all these new things that we have to take care of from time to time, and they're miscellaneous. They don't fall into anything. So what she recommends you do is you create 1 slot a week, 1 or 2 hours, where you go take care of all your random tasks. And the thing that she points out about is that when we do these random things that don't really have direct productivity value on our lives, and when I mean that, it's more like financial, right? Or getting a new client, like none of these things are going to really make a difference in that sense. But what it does is they have a high dopamine release. We feel like such a significant rush of energy when we complete these like things like getting a package from somewhere or dropping off a package through mail, because it's so rewarding and satisfying to us. So it's important that we do these because these increase our motivation and help move us forward. So if we don't get these things done, it doesn't give us that boost of energy that we want sometimes. And it just clears your calendar, which is a key thing to keep being able to not have things block up your time. Again, we're starting to see a pattern of bulking, whether it's deep work and we're doing undistracted stuff, bulking together internet time and doing all our email responses together, Facebook messages, social media, all that stuff, we're bulking it together. If you're responding, I just talked about this, emails and texts, or miscellaneous tasks into a power hour, we want to bring things together. And this is something that Tim Ferriss stresses again and again, and it's just how we become more productive. And even if you think of Henry Ford and the Model T, how it was the assembly line that really allowed cars to come into mass production. And really what before this, cars were assembled one by one. But as soon as he started getting people to do things, bulking tasks together, the assembly line was way more efficient, could produce way more cars than anything before. And so this is the same principle at work here. We want to bulk and stack things together because we can be more rapid and efficient at getting things done. One bonus thing that I want to throw in for you guys, and it's a hack that really works for me, it's called elimination. And elimination is really making more decisions, cutting things away from your life. If you look at the Latin root word of decision, it means to cut off. And so I really like that because decision means to cut off things that we don't need to do, to extract, subtract things from our life. So the more we can eliminate, it's a really important thing. Again, this is a big Tim Ferriss principle that I've adopted in my life. And it creates more space, more time for me to do things that I want to do. And I swear by it, that makes a huge difference. So here are some questions that are from the 4-hour work week that you can ask yourself to really start eliminating more from your life. The first one, if you had a heart attack and had to work 2 hours per day, what would you do? A very Tim Ferriss question. The second one, if you have a second heart attack and had to work 2 hours per week, what would you do? I've highlighted my top 3 questions here. I do recommend reading through all of them. The 3 that I like, what are the top 3 activities that I use to fill my time so I feel that I'm being productive? Because we all do things that we feel like being productive, but we're not. Sometimes for me, it's reading. It's like, oh, I'm being productive. I'm reading a book, but not really getting done what I need to get done. So that's a big thing for me. 6, learn to ask, if this is the only thing I accomplish today, will I be satisfied with my day? Again, it's like the one thing coming up again. What is the one thing I can do to accomplish today that will make my day feel satisfied or happy with? And 7, put a Post-it note on your computer, on your computer screen, or set aside an Outlook reminder to tell you at least 3 times a day with this question. Are you inventing things to do to avoid the important? And if we are inventing things to do to avoid the important, we're distracting ourselves. And so it's really about staying on focus, being able to focus on the deep work that's going to have the biggest impact on us. And that's what we're really trying to get at here with these questions. The exercises for this week, the first one is I want you to continue to do a self-time audit. The big reason for this is I want you to see where you're wasting time in your day, where you're not being productive. And so we want to keep keeping track of the same day and understanding where we're leaking time, how we can optimize, because the more we're aware of that, the better off we're going to be. The second one is schedule yourself a power hour. So make it 1 or 2 hours, pick a day, some day this week in your calendar, block it off, and get done your miscellaneous tasks. Things that you've been meaning to do are nagging you, taking up bandwidth in your mind, and get those done. Clear those out. And do that once a week where you clear out things that you need to get done, because always things when pop into our life that we need to execute on, they're one-off things that are not going to be calendar or sequence. And this is where we want to get them done. That's the miscellaneous stuff that we execute on. Third, elimination exercise. So I want you to sit down 30 minutes one day this week and go through the following questions that I've created. 1, what are the top 3 activities I use to fill time to feel as though I'm being productive? And the more you can understand how you're doing this, the better off you'll be. B, what tasks, projects, or commitments do I currently have that could be eliminated from my life to create more free time? And C, what could I physically get rid of that I'm no longer using to create more space in my life? And this is like, actually, I've been getting rid of stuff, selling things on Kijiji, getting rid of things that we don't need in our life anymore. It creates more space, opens up opportunities. So these are the 3 exercises I want you to focus on. With the elimination exercise, you can also go back to Tim Ferriss's questions on the previous slide and look at them as well. These are the 3 that I want you to think about. But if you have more time and you really want to leverage those questions, they're super valuable. They're things that I go to again and again. And the optional exercise is bulking Facebook text message replies. So this is kind of like putting all your internet time together, and kind of what Cal Newport suggested, going through your day, having periods where you're working, and then having periods where you're getting on the internet on your phone to get back to things, jump on Instagram, whatever you want to do. But this is optional depending on how you feel about this, but it is something that you might want to consider depending on how much you feel your phone pulls you away from what you need to do, or maybe getting the habit of using airplane mode and saying 3 hours on airplane mode and then jumping into social, internet, etc. So here are the resources that came up in this module: Deep Work, books I talked about, Procrastination Patient, 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, Better Than Before, Gretchen Rubin, and The One Thing, Gary Keller, The Paper by Sophie Leroy, Todd Herman, 90-Day Year Program. These are all things that were referenced again in this program. So if you want to dig into these, you can definitely Google them. It's not hard to find these things, and you can get more information on that. So that is the last slide for this module. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you guys really enjoyed that. This one's a little bit longer than the other ones for sure. It's a little bit more dense with information, but like I said, a lot of people enjoyed it, and so I hope you like it as well. If you have any questions, hit me up with an email, a text message, or on social, and I'll definitely get back to you there.